Have you ever wondered where on earth Stanford was during those 30 lost years? Well, don't worry, because today we're gonna explore some of the dimensions Stan visited, from places that seem like his worst nightmare to others that are not what we expected. Let's start with the Nightmare Realm. We start with the Nightmare Dimension, and no, Freddy Krueger doesn't live here. This is actually the home of the evil little triangle, Bill Cipher. This place can undoubtedly drive anyone crazy, just like it did to poor Ford. According to Stan's experience, this place seemed to have no gravity. On top of that, as is often the case of this dimension, nightmares are very common. You can find horrible things in this place. He even encountered Bill Cipher himself sitting on his throne, backed by creatures too horrible to describe. When Bill realized that Stanford was in his dimension, he invited him to play a game of intergalactic chess. But since Bill is a cheater, when he snapped his fingers, a horrible creature chased poor Stan. He managed to take refuge and hide from that horrible creature. But you know how Bill is. He finds fun in everything. He thought Stan wanted to play hide and seek, so he ordered that whoever found him first and brought him back would get their own galaxy. So poor Stan had to face a bunch of creatures of all sizes and shapes. But in his hiding spot, he found a group of refugees who were also hiding, and they offered him to join their group. The leader of this group was the one who explained to Ford who Bill Cipher was and why he was so feared. But this dimension was too unstable for Ford to stay, so he decided to look for another dimension to escape to, and decided to tell his story to these refugees, who kindly decided to help him and offered him a dimensional translator and some food. This is how Ford, almost resigned to never returning home, decided that his plan was to travel from dimension to dimension to gather information about Bill Cipher, about his weaknesses, and how to confront him. After the refugees had this talk with Ford, he decided to enter a black hole to enter a new dimension. Stan himself describes it as having lived 100 lives during those 30 years he spent traveling through the dimensions. And the more he traveled, the stranger things he encountered on his way. But he also acquired new skills, like speaking 13 languages, fighting various creatures, and even getting tattooed with a tribe of warrior piglets. That's the reason he wears his turtleneck sweater. And wow, he definitely has something in common with his brother Stanley in the multiverse, as he became the most wanted man in the multiverse. After surviving the nightmares, Stan ended up in the M dimension. In the M dimension, everything is shaped like an M. I'm not kidding! Mountains, rivers, even the animals. Everything is designed like this letter. Even their alphabet has 26 times the letter M. Just imagine being in a place where even the water flows in the shape of an M. Ford, always the curious scientist, dedicated himself to decoding complex patterns that follow these shapes to find an exit. What a challenge for this brain! But if he learned anything in this dimension, it was to think non-linearly, which was crucial for surviving in the following dimensions. Next, Stan visited the dimension of second chances. The dimension of second chances, a place where every mistake can be corrected because everything constantly resets. Ford took advantage of this infinite cycle to try different strategies and experiments without fear of permanent consequences. Ford used this dimension to perfect techniques that he would later apply in his fight against Bill Cipher. But then he realized that living in the same thing over and over is not as good as it seems. Next, we have the dimension of gambling, a place where everything is resolved by betting. Ford even commented that babies learn to roll dice from the moment they're born. Here Ford was forced to participate in dangerous challenges and games where he bet his own freedom, knowledge, and even his own life. But don't think they were fair games. Here the cards were always marked. Ford had to use his wits to win in games designed to cheat against him. He learned to read his opponents and detect patterns of behavior, skills that would later be essential in his confrontation with Bill Cipher. So Ford developed an impressive skill for winning games of chance. Remember those casinos in Las Vegas? For Ford, they would be a simple warm-up. Now things get flat in the two-dimensional dimension. Ford entered a completely flat world, like a sheet of paper. Adapting to this new perspective was a tremendous challenge, as the laws of physics were completely different. He even almost got trapped and even commented that in this world, he could even be considered as a god. In the journal, he shows us how his head got trapped, and this is why Stan couldn't communicate with the inhabitants, as his mouth was practically stuck. The inhabitants of this world are quite sharp in shape and started slicing Stan's head, but one of the most incredible creatures he met saved his life. He was simply stuck up and woke up on top of a mountain in front of this mysterious creature with 7 eyes. This creature informed him that he was in the dimension 52 and that it had healed all his wounds. Something quite curious is that this character had too much information about Bill and seemed to know Stanford's purpose. And it was this who warned him that if he wanted to face Bill, he had to protect his mind. And this is why Ford had the idea of introducing a mental plate into his head. This was something mentioned in the series, and in fact, it was in this dimension where Ford underwent this operation. The Oracle, as this creature called herself, told Ford that he had the face of the one who would defeat Bill Cipher. And this makes a lot of sense, as the one who ultimately defeated Bill Cipher was Stanley. But since they were twins, it was obvious that they had the same face. After this, Ford mentions that he encountered many other dimensions. For example, there was a dimension where dinosaurs still ruled, or another where dolphins were the dominant species. There was even a dimension that was very similar to his world, except that all the inhabitants were babies. Then Ford arrived at a dimension where everything seemed perfect. And in this dimension, Stanley never sent him through the portal. On this Earth, Ford reunited with Ford, and together they created a dimensional portal neutralizer. This device allowed them to enter to the portal without coming into contact with the realm where Bill resides. In fact, when Stanford arrived in this dimension, he felt like a celebrity in the scientific world. And the Mystery Shack had become an astonishing international radiology institute. It was to be expected that Ford would immediately go to this institute, and there he reunited with the parallel Ford. But this other Ford realized that he wasn't the Stanford from his dimension, so he had him arrested. And this was because if he reunited with his other Stanford, this dimension would practically cease to exist. So Ford decided to talk to him about his quantum destabilizer, a weapon designed to destroy Bill Cipher, except it had a problem with the power source. Ford suggested an element he had found in the paradox dimension. With his help, within a few days, the quantum destabilizer was completed. And so, Ford was ready to face Bill Cipher. Stanford returned to the Nightmare Realm, a return that Stanford had been waiting for many years. When he finally got there, Bill quickly noticed his presence, and Ford notes that he felt younger than the first time he faced his army. And it was here that Bill felt true terror, as he decided to retreat to a place called the Quadrangle of Confusion. But it was just at that moment that the portal reactivated, shaking the Nightmare Dimension, and Stanford was convinced that he had to defeat Bill Cipher before he crossed the portal. So he threw a fragmentation grenade, but it only caused Stanford to be blown far away from Bill Cipher and managed to enter the portal. The opening connecting the two dimensions collapsed, and this is how Ford returned to the world of Gravity Falls and reunited with Stanley. And once again, Stanford felt that his brother sabotaged all his work. He finally had the resolution to defeat Bill Cipher, but it was ruined by Stanley. And these were all the dimensions Stanford traveled through. Let me know in the comments which one would you like to visit.